about that time.
Don't y'all love this music?
Perspective Radio Show coming your way this morning at 10 a.m. Central from the historic KCOH TV radio station, The Boost, at the corner of Alameda and Wichita in Houston, Texas. Come join me because we're going to chat about leadership and showing up and getting aligned and getting clear, and taking action and voting and voting and voting and all of that stuff. So join me for some great conversation and a few laughs. And when we're done, be sure and head over to your favorite podcast platform or to my website, laurelrutledge.com, and subscribe to my weekly podcast, The Rutledge Perspective Podcast. Episodes drop every Wednesday, and they are short and sweet, commute worthy. And I promise you, you'll get something out of every one that will help you shift your perspective. Because when you shift your perspective, you shift your circumstances. See you soon.
Good morning. Good morning. It is Tuesday morning. I am Laurel Rutledge, your Chief Navigation Officer and host of the Rutledge Perspective Radio Show live here on KCOH TV Radio, The Boost, KCOH Global Networks. And we're going to do some stuff today. We're going to talk about values, not the way you think we're talking about values, but we're going to talk about values, evaluation, all that kind of stuff. And I've got so much to say on this subject. We're going to be talking about it all month, but I got so much to say on this subject. Y'all might have to bear with me today because there's just so much rolling around in my head, but we're going to talk about this today and really get into the whole idea of who really assigns value and what do we really mean by valuation and worth and worthiness and all that good stuff, especially as business owners, right? When we're starting to figure out how we're going to run our businesses, and then as leaders as well. How are you gonna, because business owners are leader. You're leading your organization. How are you, whether it's your own business or corporation, going to be showing up? And what do you value? And how do you demonstrate what you value? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So for those of you tuned in, and I am hoping, because I never know if something's going to go wrong, that it is okay on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Facebook is www.facebook.com at the Rutledge Perspective, right? / at the Rutledge Perspective. You can find me on YouTube at the Rutledge Perspective and also on LinkedIn at Laurel-K-Rutledge. That's me. Laurel-K-Rutledge. And on IG, Laurel.K.Rutledge, although I'm not live streaming the IG at this point in time. So a few things. I said in my little picture that I do every morning that there's an announcement. I'm really excited about this. And so first, we are going to have Terry Scott next week. She is the president of the Houston Area Urban League Guild. So that is the affiliation with the Houston Area Urban League. That is the volunteer organization that really helps to push the programs out into the community. So Terry Scott is going to be here next week. So please tune in for that conversation about what the Houston Area Urban League Guild is doing, especially around skill development, employment, leadership, skill development, those kind of things. And they also do have a registration and training coming up for those who want to be judges, polling judges. So we'll talk about that too. So it's on the 26th. Unfortunately, I can't go, but I will be paying attention because I do want to go to one of those. So keep your eye out for that. That is next week, same time, right? Same bat time, same bat channel. Terry Scott will be here on the Rutledge Perspective Radio Show live. The other announcement that I have, what is that? That's the the third hour today, off the rails. Remember last year I kept talking about, and Jerry and I kept talking about doing pop-ups and being somewhere else and what we're going to do. Well, guess what? We're having the Rutledge Perspective Radio Show and the Rutledge Perspective Podcast pop up in 2023. Whoop, whoop. It is going to be the week of the 21st. I'm actually going to be in Puerto Rico for an event. And so I don't know where I'm going to be stationed yet, but if you are in Puerto Rico, because remember I said I really want to do some pop-ups across the U.S. and across the world as much as possible for all of you who have been tuning in. And I know Puerto Rico, you've been showing up. And so my first stop is going to be Puerto Rico. I think I'm going to be in the Condado area. I'm not sure, but I will let you guys know as soon as I can about where I'm going to be and how I'm going to show up. I would love to see if you are a listener of the Rutledge Perspective Radio Show live here on KCOH, and you're from Puerto Rico, or you have downloaded and listened to the podcast, I would love to see you pop up for my live versions of that are going to be happening that week. I'll be posting about it. So be sure and like and follow, because I'll be able to say, I got to double check with some people and make sure I'm not going to be like kicked out of hotel for being on camera in the lobby or something. Right. So I want to make sure that we can do that. But the radio show will be live remote from Puerto Rico, and the podcast will be broadcasting live from Puerto Rico. And that is the 24th. And I might actually do fireside that week because I need to kick off my fireside show this year. And I haven't done that yet. So I might do that live too. So you might get to see me 3 times live next week from Puerto Rico. We'll just have to see. So anyway, I am so excited about that. It's going to be awesome. So Jerry and I are working through that to make sure it is going to be good to go here in studio. So I'll be dialing in here so you can hear me on the KCOH Global Network. And then I will still be on my platforms as well. So you'll be able to catch me next week. So hopefully StreamYard is acting right, because I don't see any of y'all up on my StreamYard coming through yet. So I'm hoping it is actually broadcasting. If not, I know it's broadcasting on the KCOH page and on Jerry P. Beasley's page. So hopefully it'll be all good. All right. So we are going to be talking about values today. I've got a few more things to tell you, but we'll get to those at the end after we do the shout outs and stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about values, and I'm talking about this on the podcast this week too. And as your chief navigator, right? As the person who helps you navigate through situations, circumstances, organizational design, all of those things, right? That's what I do. That is my genius, is navigating situations, navigating organizations, setting your organization up so that you understand what's going on and how a great business strategy connects to a great people strategy, and how you have to connect all of those. That's where my genius is. And as I was talking to some people this week and some clients and prepping myself for this retreat that I'm going on, that's going to be so great, is this whole idea of value and worth. I truly believe that if we listen, and y'all have heard me say this before, if we listen, the things that we need to hear come to us, right? Those messages come to us. What we're supposed to be doing comes to us if we're willing to listen. And towards the end of the year, I was so busy towards the end of the year, November and December, there was so much going on. I didn't get to spend the time I usually spend really in kind of contemplation, meditation, quiet, planning for what I'm going to do the next year, getting still. I didn't have that. And so when this year started, as I said last week, I was just a bit discombobulated, right? Something just felt off. Things didn't feel right. And I was like, wait, this is not the way I want to start off 2023. I am not having it. Something is wrong. But you guys have heard me say, there's a reason I do what I do. That whole alignment, vision, action. It starts with you. Who you are, where you are, what you want, and what it takes to get there. And in order to navigate through your circumstances, you've got to start with who you are and where you are. You got to be really clear on who you are. And so for me, my root system, faith, family, friends, and health. And that health is big health, physical, financial, emotional, all the things, right? When my world is off, one of those things is off, because I've done so much deep work on me. I know one of those things is off. So I'm like feeling some type of way, something not going on. But then this week, I ended up, again, I was listening to Joyce Myers. I missed her a few times, so I was listening to her replay. And this one, she happened to be talking about something else. And then she mentioned the word value. And then I got to thinking about a conversation I had with my dear friend, Holly. You guys met Holly on the radio show last year. Holly Dowling, my friend, who reminds us that you do not have to be perfect to be priceless. You do not have to be perfect to be priceless. That's one of her Hollyisms. And I believe that you are priceless because you exist, right? You are here for a reason, and you exist, and therefore you are priceless. And so I'd had this conversation with Holly about a bunch of other stuff, but that reminded me when I heard Joyce Meyer talking about values, and then Holly and I were engaged in this chat. And then I started thinking about what I'm doing for clients and where I want to go for clients and all of you. And then I read an article that someone posted on LinkedIn that I'm going to actually respond to. And my response is going to be really controversial. So I'm going to write an article about it. It's going to be really controversial for many of you, but I'm going to write it anyway, because it's just the truth, because we speak the truth here. And so I thought, you know what? if we're really going to dive into this year or any project, any change, we have got to really understand the baseline values. And we've got to understand what our value is. And we're going to talk further on in the month about valuation, right? And I have this conversation with people all the time when they're like, I need to be paid my value, charge your value. And you've heard me say this, and I will go to my grave saying this. No one can pay you what you're worth. No one. There's not enough money in the world to pay you what you're worth because you are priceless. What you're really wanting is someone to pay you for the value of the experience and expertise that you have. That's what you want to get paid for. Okay. But we'll talk about that deeper later. But what this whole idea of values, especially as business owners and as leaders, good morning, Jenny, is we've got to understand how we value ourselves, who we are and where we are. What value do we put on us? Because if we don't get clear on the value that we assign to ourselves, to our expertise, to whatever it is, then we allow other folks to tell us what the value is. And that's what happens, right? So I was doing some reading around this whole idea of values. Y'all know I love to read. And I love behavior and psychology and all that kind of stuff. And so I was reading this morning, and first, I went and just said, let me just get some definitions of value, right? Because I know I have my own personal definition, but let's just define value. So there's the noun of value, which is the importance, worth, usefulness, right, of something. That's the value of something, right? That importance or usefulness. But then there's values, right, that you have, and that's your principles, your standards of behavior, what's important in your life. Those are your values. And then there's the verb to value something, right? To place importance upon it, to decide that it has meaning for you. And I said, okay, well, that's really great. But it's deeper than that. When we're talking about how we show up and live in, not only in our values, but how we value ourselves, right? What value do we place on our very existence? Because when you get challenged through that path to the goal you are trying to achieve, when you get challenged around a perspective or a pursuit, when everybody around you is naysaying, right? Not challenging you to support you, but just naysaying because you got haters. Not everybody watching is a fan, right? If you're not really solid in who you are and really aware of where you are, you can't put that in context. And it's easy for that stuff to get real deep and make you begin to question your own value. And you'll hear me talk about this story on the podcast this week if you get a chance to listen to it. And I encourage you to do that on your favorite podcast platform. Is when we aren't solid, we allow other people's stuff to get in. And so, especially if you are in a toxic organization, you can start thinking about, and especially women, maybe it's me, right? Maybe I don't communicate as well. Maybe I did miss something. Maybe I don't understand. Maybe I'm not as smart. All the maybes, right? Coulda, woulda, shoulda, didn't. We allow other people's projection of their own agendas to get real deep into how we feel about ourselves, our own value, our own worth, our own genius. And so I started doing some more reading around this. And there is a sociologist. His name is Morris Massey. He was born in 1939. He got his undergrad and master's from UT Austin, and then he got his PhD from LSU. So he's a Texas, Louisiana boy, right? And then he ended up teaching at Boulder, Colorado. And he talks about this whole idea of values and personal value, the values we hold for ourselves in kind of three areas. He talks about, first, your values are imprinted. That's from like birth to age 7. So that's when you're just a sponge. Other people are imprinting, mostly your parents or close family members are imprinting values upon you, right? When you're young. Then you get to the next stage, which is modeling. So ages 8 to 13, you're modeling. You're wanting to behave like the others. You see all these TikToks, and if you have kids or nephews or nieces or whatever, you've seen them model their parents, right? The parent is sitting one way on a couch. They do the same thing, right? That 8 to 13, you're modeling the same clothes, the same words, the same behaviors, the gestures. You're trying things on to see how they feel for you because that's what you're seeing, right? But then age like 14 to 21, kind of that area, that is when you are socializing and your peers become real important to you, right? Your peers are reflecting to you your values. That's when you get challenged about what you think. That's when all the peer pressure happens, right? What you're wearing, how you're speaking. Do you dance? Can you not dance? Are you a nerd? Are you a whatever, right? The whole peer pressure, that school age years, right? That 13 to 21, those preteen to first year college kind of thing through the college years. That's when that peer pressure gets really heavy and you begin to either solidify or deny those things that are important to you. Those things are intrinsic to you, which is one of the reasons why we have, especially in social media, we got so many challenges, right, around mental health and sociological safety and all those kind of things. And so as I was reading through this stuff that Massey was putting on and thinking about values and our own personal values, especially how they show up as leaders, there's this whole idea of what is it that makes you who you are? And how do you stand strong in that value? So no matter what happens around you, no one can take that away from you. When you picture people like an Oprah, when you picture people like a Maya Angelou, a Hakeem Jeffries, now when I saw him, his speech was fire, y'all. His speech in Congress was fire. I'm just saying, if you haven't read it, you need to you need to go listen to that. Total sidebar, but he was amazing. Going to keep my eye on him because I was impressed. You think of people like him. You think of those folks who exude kind of this confidence, true confidence, not the bravado, but true confidence, which is usually quiet. It's usually quiet. They're not bragging about a lot of stuff. They're not talking about a lot of accomplishments. It's an aura that they have. There's a confidence and a solid understanding of the value that they themselves are putting on who they are. They know without a doubt who they are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? They know how they show up, right? And what they're doing. And there's no way for other people to take them off that game. And as I'm getting prepared to go to this seminar, and this is a seminar of entrepreneurs, it's I'm going to Rachel Rogers' ROI Summit. And this is also perfect timing in terms of value, right? Because going to the summit and return on investment, right? The value that you're getting out of this thing. The whole summit is focused around return, right? And entrepreneurship is how do we sit in these, understand these personal and sometimes cultural values that sit with us? And how do we make those so solid and so strong that when we are in situations in our business where we're being challenged by a client, where we're being challenged by a customer, where we're being challenged by an employee, how can we stand strong in who we are? So no matter how we respond or what else is going on, we're not in this boomerang effect. We're not just ping ponging all over the place because of the thought of the day or the feeling of the day. We're not in our emotion. We're still compassionate, but we are so solid in who we are and what we feel that we're able to operate from a grounding and a calm and a peace and a confidence that the value that we put on ourselves cannot be negated by what happens externally to us. Someone decides to leave the organization. Okay. That's not a reflection of me personally. I have to actually help someone be successful somewhere else. That's not a reflection of who I am personally. Right. I have a customer that leaves. I have a customer that's upset. I have a promotion that I didn't get. Because that was another article I read about someone's experience being just marginalized, right? When the team changed. That's not a reflection of my personal value. Now, let me be clear. I'm not talking about behavior. So when I say that's not about me, right? That's not a reflection of me. What I mean by that is if you have mistreated someone and they decide to leave and you start having a mass exodus, that is absolutely a reflection of you as the business owner. Absolutely. It's a reflection of your behavior and how that behavior manifests. It may not be you intrinsic to your core, but there's something that is causing a behavior that is causing an outcome, right? So don't mistake my saying that it's not about you as you're not responsible. Those are two completely different conversations, right? What I'm talking about is that ability to understand very clearly who you are and the environment in which you are operating. And if you're going to be able to navigate, you have to know that without a doubt. You have to be eyes wide open, clear that you're in an organization that has a certain kind of culture, and how you need to operate in that culture, and whether or not that works for you or not is a whole different decision. But you got to know it before you can make that decision. You got to be aware of it. You got to be willing to address it and call it what it is, whether that's call it what it is out loud or call it what it is in your own head and heart. But you got to be able to acknowledge it and call it out. And you've got to be able to distinguish that environment, that culture, from your value. Because what happens is our pay, the promotion, the person deciding whether or not they want to do business with us, especially if your business is a service-oriented business, we start to believe that that is a reflection of who we are intrinsically and our own value, because we use the word so broadly, right? People don't value my services. If you don't pay this price, then you're just not my people, right? I have a certain value of what I give. Okay. All of that stuff may be true, but what people are paying for is the experience that you have and the expertise that you have. And you just happen to be the vehicle, right, that is delivering that. For those who have grown up in professional services, and I had the ability to work at Deloitte for a number of years. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so good at what I do, right? I was an accountant. I've done operations. I've done logistics. I've done consulting. That's the reason I'm able to navigate so clearly through really crazy things, is because of the experience that I was blessed to have. Not because I am intrinsically better than anybody. My experiences are just different and enable me to do some things. But especially in those professional services, what you're selling is what's in your head, right? You're selling what you know. You're selling how you deliver. And so if someone says no, it's easy to translate that no into a personal rejection. And now there could be personality differences, right? Everybody's not for everybody. But if you're selling a service and somebody's not ready for that service, that's not necessarily that you don't have value. You personally don't have value. That's not what that says. That means that they're not ready, or they don't want it, or there's some disconnect in personalities that just doesn't work, or they don't understand it, right? There's a myriad of reasons, but one of those reasons is not your own personal value. You are priceless because you exist, and you don't have to be perfect to be priceless, right? That personal value of who you are has got to be so solid for you that you don't allow external circumstances to get you off your game. Right. And it's so easy to do that when you are trying to get someone and when you're trying to build something new, and you're going through, especially for those of you who are entrepreneurs or in this online space, you're doing A/B testing. You got to put this freebie thing out there, and you got to do this masterclass, and you got to do this, all of the things, and nobody buys, nobody signs up, or they sign up for all your free stuff, but nobody's writing your check, or whatever it is. I have seen more people posting in this group that I'm in. And I get it because I feel it too. And I've been there too. And I've said the same words of, what is it about me? It must be me. What am I doing wrong? Nobody wants to buy my stuff. Nobody believes that I'm good. What is wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. Your process may be a little bit off, or there may be something around your copy or something that's not working. There's something about the process that's not working. But that doesn't mean that you don't have the skills you say you have, or you don't have the value you say you have. Now, you need to be honest with you. Can you really deliver what you say you deliver? Because I'm telling you, there are a lot of people out there who have built multi-million-dollar businesses and they ain't delivering nothing. Nothing. There's no repeat business. There's no return customers, because people figure out, wait, I spent all this money, but I didn't get anything. Right? But they've gotten really good at selling the dream. And because they do it in such a way, the dreamers keep coming. They just don't stay. Right. And so one of the things that's so important, one of the many things that's so important about this conversation around your own value, is understanding that, as the scripture says, where, your treasure is, your heart is there also. Right. So where are you putting your value? Are you putting your value on that sale that's made? Are you putting your value on that evaluation, your personal value on that evaluation? Is that your treasure? Is that performance review? Your treasure is that sale. Your treasure is that review online. Your treasure is that number of followers. If that's where you're putting your treasure and your heart is tied up in that, you are always going to be disappointed at some point. Always. Something's always going to be able to jack you around because you're putting your value in something that you can control. You cannot control somebody else's vision of you. As the saying, as I've seen a lot of this lately, what you think of me is none of my business. You can't control what people think of you. You cannot control what people say about you. Now, if there's libel and slander and all that, you can actually take action. Of course you can. But you can't control someone else's thoughts and processes. But you can control how you feel about you. You can do the deep work to get really solid in how you believe you bring value and what your intrinsic value is for just being here. And be really real with yourself about that. I know me. If I don't know anything else, I know me. I know that I am in it to win it until I'm not. And I can be done overnight. And I'm not nasty about it. I'm not crying and screaming and yelling and being ugly. I'm just done. Kind of like Michelle Obama said, quiet ghosting, or slow ghosting, although I don't go really slow. If I'm done, I'm just done. I'm out. I'm out. I'm not going to be nasty, but I'm just done. Right. I also know that I love to learn. And if I'm not learning, then I feel off kilter. That was one of the things that I recognized, right? When I went back and got back to my core four. I was not feeding myself. I was not healthy mentally because I wasn't continuing to push my brain, right? I was allowing other things to come in that weren't working for me. I know that I can be really silly. I know that I can be really impatient, especially with myself. I know that I have a really hard line around the truth and facts. It is a hard line, big, bright, hard line. And I know that. And I know that's going to really irritate a lot of people. That doesn't mean I don't see gray because I absolutely see gray. I also know that facts are facts. And while I am entitled to my own opinion, I am not entitled to my own facts, and neither are you. There is still such a thing as truth. And I am hard line about that. There are other things that I'm like, yeah, whatever. But that for me is a hard line. So when I get into situations where all of a sudden I'm like, I must be crazy. Am I just not able to communicate? Why did that? I don't understand. When I'm really confused like that, and I'm really starting to delve into, okay, Laura, what did you do? What did you say? How did that happen? How are you going to navigate through the rest of this? How are you going to make this right? How are you going to fix this? I have been now, I'm 54, right? I've had a long time to get to this. How am I going to get back to really getting clear on what is really going on? And I allow myself to just stop and say, wait, let's evaluate this objectively. If I need a minute, let me take a minute. Let me go take a minute, have my little pity party, have my fit about whatever it is, take a few breaths, go do some walks, go do some rows, go do something to just let my brain rest. And then we'll get back to it and address it. Because I know who I am and whose I am. And I am not going to allow someone else to tell me what my value is, what my personal value is. And what happens in organizations and entrepreneurs, this is really important for you. What happens in organizations is the culture of the organization begins to inform people what's valuable. But here's the rub. That's what's valuable to the organization based on the organization's objectives and goals. It sometimes gets communicated as the individual not being valuable, the individual not being of value. That's what happens in our communication process. And that's not true. Now, what may be true
Omaha, Pittsburgh, Dallas, Atlanta, Kansas City, Washington, and Houston.
I love it. Thank y'all. So y'all online, we're back. We are back on StreamYard. I have no idea what happened, but we're back. Thank y'all for tuning in to see y'all today, but I'm sure y'all are listening. Hey, Dr. Hickman. Um, I, I I just don't even know. Y'all, this is such a gut thing for me because it requires a paradigm shift, right? It requires, in order for you to navigate wherever you are, it requires you to really be solid. I mean, I don't know, Jerry, we have talked about this, but for you, right? For you as this incredible producer, this comedian, right? Sister Jerry P. Beasley. I know you hate that. But this whole, this believer in supporting people in their mental health journey. How do you stay focused on defining your own value so that nobody else can do that for you or nobody can get you out of your space? You know what I mean? Out of your lane.
I really pray and I meditate a lot often, and I do that because I don't want to be hindered off of what my core values are. There are some things that I'm just not going to do because I've built in time a personal brand, but it's according to, for me, the way God has designed it. So it's easy for me because if I need to go back to figure out what my personal brand is whatever God says for me to do. So it's not really hard for me. And I know how to turn things down. And I've always prayed to God, let me be able to not have a gig, but an assignment. You may not even want to do, right? You're not feeling like you're just so destroyed behind doing it.
Right.
But so that's been my journey all my life, is just to pray that I stay in alignment with what he told me to do for me. And he gives me a different way of doing it. And then here you go when you're talking about value, because at some point you may not be valuable to somebody, but you said it, it's not that you're not valuable, and everybody has a right to choose what they find value in.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, you have to know and stand firm.
Right.
No, that goes outside of what I'm going to do.
Right.
Maybe I gave you this free for 2 months, but this time I'm not going to give it to you free for 2 months because I saw you pay Lester.
Right.
Okay? So you got the money. And so that's why I'm at now that I've done a lot of stuff, on general principle, just to be kind. But then I saw that no, some way I've allowed other people to take advantage of that. And so you have to give it to yourself and say, no, you allowed other people to take advantage because you thought at one point their light would come on and say, now, I should do something for this person. But that doesn't always happen. So you got to put your foot down. And you don't have to get, and I like what you said, you don't have to be angry. And I'm like that too. When I'm done, I'm done.
I'm just done.
Be angry.
Right.
I just be done.
Right.
But trust me, I've given so many chances before I get to that point.
Yes. Well, and I think, to what you said, it is, people do have a choice, right? They have a choice, and not everybody's for everybody, and not every time is the right time. Right. And this distinguishing factor is that rejection of value is not a rejection of your person, of your value. It is a rejection of the thing that you are offering, right? And unfortunately, especially as entrepreneurs, we get our self-worth tied up in our offer, tied up in our business. And don't get me wrong, when you put blood, sweat, and tears and all kinds of money, and it's quote unquote rejected, that can gut punch you. It can absolutely gut punch you. And we can get sidetracked into thinking, oh my gosh, well, maybe I don't need to do this. This isn't my calling. Maybe I'm not good enough at this, right? Remember, my first thing in this week is you are good enough, right? That rejection is not necessarily about you as a person. It's not about you as a person, not about your intrinsic value. It may be about the value that somebody else is putting on something. There's this thing called the endowment principle. Remember, I was talking about Massey earlier. It's called the endowment principle. It's the idea of what people are willing to pay versus what people are willing to accept. And those are absolutely opposite. And so the study that was done by these behaviorists, and this is important when we're talking about our own internal value, the study that was done by these psychologists and behaviorists was, they simply had a group of people, and these people in this particular thing had a mug, like a coffee mug. It was clear that they owned the mug. And then they were asked about selling this mug. The amount of money that they would accept for this mug in exchange for something else, right? And I don't think they did money. They did exchange, like mugs for pens or something like that. The amount that they required in order to let go of the thing they owned was super high. Super high, right? What they would accept in exchange was super high. But when they were on the opposite end, what they were willing to give for that mug was super low, right? There was a threshold. And so we're battling, when you are building a business, you are battling that idea of what people are willing to accept versus what people are willing to expend. Think about buying a house. There's the buyer and the seller. The seller has a point at which they are not willing to accept anything lower, but the buyer has a point where they're not willing to bid any higher. Hopefully at some point in between, the two shall meet, but that's why deals fall through. The buyer is simply not willing to pay what the owner wants, what the seller wants, and the seller is simply not willing to accept what the buyer says they're willing to pay. There's a distinct difference or gap in the value of the thing, right? When you're selling a house, you believe this is the best house in the thing, right? That the decor was great, but that person that's looking at it is like, I can't believe they use this paint. I'm going to have to redo and break down walls and all. That's what they're seeing. So the value that they have placed on that thing is very different than you as the owner. The value that you've put intrinsically, but also the emotional value you've put on top of it. It's the same thing for us. We get our emotional value tied up in the thing we're trying to give to people. We get our emotions tied up in that performance review, whether or not we got that promotion, what our salary is. We get emotionally tied up in all that stuff that's external, that we have very little control over. And we let it inform us as to our personal value. But your personal value is related to who you are. It is impacted by where you are, but it is defined by who you are, and you get to define it.
But you said something earlier, because the truth of the matter is, it's really back on us again. When you said that, I'm thinking of this guy, Jakaris Johnson, who's a big producer and player. Mm-hmm. And many years ago, I took him a script of this play that I do now, mm-hmm. 20-something years. Mm-hmm. But he refused it. Mm-hmm. And I got the rejection letter that said that you're never going to, this is not a touring play, this mm-hmm. is not what we're going to do. And I'm like, hurt. And then I took the rejection letter and I put it on the mirror, mm-hmm. and I said, this is a lie for me. This is true, but it's not mine. But as I matured, I realized this wasn't for him.
Right.
I do gospel stage plays. Right. He did something totally different than
mm-hmm.
what I was doing.
Right.
And then, yes, the play did tour. It didn't tour with him.
Right.
So at the end of the day, isn't it going back on, it doesn't mean you're not, worthy.
Right.
It just means that you honestly are not a fit.
Exactly.
For whoever didn't reject you but declined the offer, because you're doing something different.
See, words matter and context matter. They didn't reject you, they declined the offer. I love that, Jerry. They declined the offer, right? And that's important to know. That's part of the reason why you try to go in with eyes wide open to stuff. And it's hard. We are emotional, right? We are. And many times we lead with emotions, or we lead with desperation. We really need that job. We really need that promotion. We really need that money. We really need that sale. We lead with desperation, and desperation is easily sniffed out. Man, you smell like desperation, right? People can see that a mile away when you are desperate for something. And so we get our emotions tied up. So when we get the rejection, as opposed to using that rejection as a catapult to something else, we see it as a completely debilitating, we're not worthy. We got to start all over. And that's what happens sometimes too with entrepreneurs. And I'm guilty of it myself. The first thing didn't work. You try something else. You try something else. You try something else. You don't live and lead with something long enough to really just tweak it. You completely throw it out and start over. That's why you can't find anything. That's why you can't find your thing, because you're redoing everything every time, as opposed to tweaking, getting that input, getting those rejections, understanding why it was rejected, making modifications where you believe you need to make them because it's still your business, right? And then finding your people, because that's the other thing. Find your people. I know I'm not for everybody, and I'm okay with that. I am not for everybody. It is really clear. I am focused on women business owners, 7-figure women business owners, right? In particular, for some of my business, $5 to $10 million revenue women business owners, because of what we're doing, because of the work I'm doing with them, right? I'm very clear on who they are. That doesn't mean that I won't work with other people, but that is on a case-by-case basis, and we have to have a conversation, right? Because there is a place in strategy, in business maturity, right? In thought process and in planning that those folks are, that other folks that are just startup are not. Not because they're not smart, not because they're not worthy. It is a matter of experience and exposure, right? It's the whole thing when I talk about worthiness and defining that, when you look at this, what's valuable, what's not valuable, that whole idea of education and making sure that education is equal, that everyone has access to an exceptional education, is because if you haven't seen it, if you haven't been exposed to it, if you haven't experienced it, you don't know it exists, right? If you are just starting up, if you're good, you go watch and study other people. But if you haven't gotten there, there's still some things you are going through and learning and developing and manipulating, right? But because of that, I know who I'm working with. I also know who I'm working with in corporate spaces. Very clear who I'm working with in corporate spaces to navigate. You know, those folks who have been newly promoted into the C-suite or direct reports to the C-suite, because I've been there. That navigation is completely different. It is, your world just went upside down. Your world just changed. When you got to that navigate, that is a whole different thing. And you've got to be able to figure out how to navigate that space, because it just turned 180 degrees when you got that promotion. I don't care what organization you're in. It is completely different now, right? So I am very clear on who I'm working with in this role as Chief Navigation Officer. And because I'm clear on that, I'm clear on who I'm not for. I also know that not everybody is ready to have the kind of deep conversations, the kind of raw conversations, the kind of real conversations, the kind of non-judgmental spaces, right? But accountable spaces, the kind of challenging that I do, because I do come back to people and say, okay, but here's what you said, but here's what the data said. And those are different. So let's talk about the data and get it with the real insight that comes from that. So we can address that, because we can't address emotion. We can address data and the impact that data has on your emotion, but we got to go with facts. And that doesn't work for valuation of my personal intrinsic value. One has nothing to do with the other. It is a reflection on my client's readiness or where they are in the space or whether or not our personalities match. All that stuff is true. All that stuff is true. And while I am cognizant of that and pay attention to that, because it's important to pay attention to it, that's where enlightenment and arrogance get off kilter, right? That arrogance is, well, it's not me. It's never me. No. When you are really enlightened and aware, it's like, well, that could be me, because I didn't show up the best, or I really didn't want that. And it showed, whatever that thing, you got to know who you are. There are some things that are personality mismatches, or it's just not the right service, but that has nothing to do with your own value. And I want, as we go into this year and you're talking about navigating whatever it is you got to navigate in 2023, spend the time now in January. Don't leave January without clarity on your own value. Don't allow another month to pass without you being really solid in your value, and whatever that means you need to have. Do you need to journal on a regular basis? Do you need to have Post-its sticking up? When something gets off kilter and somebody makes you feel some type of way, where can you go back to remind yourself that you do not have to be perfect to be priceless, as Holly says? That you are valuable because you exist. That in this moment you are enough, and in this moment you have everything that you need. Where do you go to get back to that? Because as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you got to find a way to keep yourself pumped up. Find your village. I would not be here without my village. I would not. And my village is varied, right? I got different neighborhoods in my village. I got those ride or die, sorority sisters. I got my friends for life that we have literally known each other since birth, right? I got a bunch of villages. I've got my business that has turned into be friends, right? Jenny's online, or was earlier before the system crept out on us. I've got villages all over the place. I got Dr. Cynthia, right? Who is so supportive all the time. So I've got amazing people in my village. So when I'm getting to feel some type of way, I go back to my village and I remind myself of who I am and what I'm put here to do, right? I know I am moving in divine purpose. Now, how it's going to show up, I don't know, but the how is none of my business. I got to focus on the what, and the how will show up, right? I got to focus on what I am put here to do and do everything in my power to do that, and be flexible enough to take later information to shift. And that's what I ask you to do. But you have to start. If you're going to navigate, you have to start with you. You have to start with you. And I know that's hard, because that internal work is hard, because you got to be real with you. You can lie to a whole bunch of folks, but you can't lie to yourself. Well, you can try.
Dr. Hickman just said, we are valuable in God's eyes despite professional goals and aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my take on that for real. I always said, unless it matters to him,
right,
it doesn't matter to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I know everybody believes in something totally different, but my core value is it has to be fulfilling purpose.
Right.
And it has to be a service that is necessary to somebody.
Right.
Now, you said something about following others and you watch other people do whatever you were saying. Mm-hmm. What I see happen a lot of time is when people do that, they end up imitating other people.
Yes.
And then you become in this big jelly bowl of the same thing.
Yep.
And I think the person that is willing to be authentic,
yes, maybe
learn a little few things, but come up with your own strategy, is the person that he will continue to promote, because you're authentic. Yeah. And people are looking for something different, but they're also looking for something that really brings them value. Yes. Your show, my show, we're totally different in shows, but you know your target audience. Right. I know mine, and I said it on Facebook today. It's important to know who is your audience. Absolutely. Who are you here to serve? Yep. And that's when it's important to follow the need. Yep. And not just the dreams and the aspirations that she said and the goals. And I get totally what she said. Because a lot of times we get so focused on, I have to do it like this because they said 20 points to do it like that. 7 points to be famous or whatever. And then you're frustrated because you're like everybody else. Not only are you like everybody else, but that stuff didn't necessarily work for them. No. Right? But that's what I was saying earlier, right? They've got the right post that says 7 steps to blah, 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 because we are quick to click on the steps. 7 steps to this, 5 tips for, we are quick to click on that stuff, right? I've got get my free plan, get my free, structure for, we are quick to do that because we want it easy. We want the magic bullet. It's just like losing weight. Everybody wants the pill that makes you lose weight, right? We want the magic bullet. We don't like to work hard, right? And there is such a thing as working smarter, not harder, right? But sometimes we just don't want to make a lot of effort or put a lot of energy in, especially if somebody else has done it. Now, again, as Jerry said, that's not to say that you can't learn from people. Absolutely. But it's like that book, Outliers. If you haven't read Outliers, please read Outliers. It's by Malcolm Gladwell. And one of the premises he talks about is a lot of what you're seeing and what people are selling has a lot to do with timing, right? A lot to do with timing. When did they start? Those folks who started stuff like right at the beginning of the pandemic, the reason they're really doing it is because people were clamoring for stuff at the beginning of the pandemic. So you come in now, 3 years later, trying to do the exact same thing. Guess what? It's too late. You missed the boat, right? So recognize that sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, timing is a component. The market is a component. When I posted what we were going to talk about today, who gets to assign your value to you? We'll talk about later who gets to assign market value, right? Who gets to decide what you're willing to pay? When I talk to businesses and when I was in corporate America, I'm like, let's be real about what we're going to pay. Brad Smart wrote a book called Top Grading that talks about talent. He talks about A, B, and C talent, right? But he defines A talent is the best talent you can get in the market
for what you're willing to pay. That's top talent. And that's a key component of the definition, right? Because everybody wants the engineer from MIT, but some of y'all don't want to pay engineer from MIT money. So you've got to get real with what value you're willing to pay. What are you willing to give to get the thing you say you want? Just like when you are selling something. I went to I attended a free masterclass for somebody. It was a LinkedIn class. I thought, oh, this is great. And I was, wanting to support another Black woman who was doing it. And I went and it was 45 minutes of selling. I didn't get any value. It's 45 minutes of selling. And then at the end, it was like, and if you really want to work with me, here is what it costs to work with me. And if that number is just too big for you, then you're not my people, quote unquote. Now, to say that my attitude got bad is an understatement. Because I'm thinking, I just spent 45 minutes that I can't get back because time is not renewable. You didn't deliver any value to me at all. And then you insulted me by saying, if I don't want to pay your price, then I'm just not your people. Well, number one, I'm clearly not your people. I'm not your people because I'm not paying that for you because I don't see the value. I don't see the value. Now, I am not passing judgment on you as an individual because, see, I don't know you, right? I don't know you. My first introduction to you was this free thing that I went to, right? And so when we talk about, and as Jerry said, that how are you deciding what you're going to do and who are you following? Pay attention to who you're following and what their real story was, how they really got to where they are. And I can speak to that because I did the same thing, right? I'm following other people. I'm doing this online thing. It's new to me. I'm a brick and mortar person. I came out of corporate. There's language that I know. There's stuff that I know that is real, right? And so we're saying the same words, but meaning something different, right? And I got caught up in, well, but they've been doing this, so maybe they know better than me. Maybe I do need to use these words. Maybe I do need to do this thing. Maybe I need to. And then I gradually was like, I am not doing this live launch thing where I got to be online for 12 days, talking to people, selling for 12 days. No, number one, I don't like that feeling. And number two, it's not authentic to me. And number three, my energy can't do that. Why am I doing that? Does it work for people? Absolutely. Clearly, it has worked for people. Absolutely. And I'm not negating that, but it didn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. And so I had to get back to who I am, how I show up. And I want the same thing for you guys. Who are you? What do you value? What do you bring to the table? What is your genius? What makes you amazing? Because even if you do the same thing that 400 other people do, they don't do it like you do. They don't say it the way you say it. They don't deliver it the way you deliver it. There is something unique to you in the way you deliver your services. And just as Jerry said, be who you are. Be who you are. It's been 6 years, right, to come to this chief navigation officer. And I'm like, finally. But to Jerry's point earlier, it's in that journey when you are finding out who you are and being aware of who you are and where you are. When are you pushing just to push? When are you pushing that noodle uphill and you just need to stop? Because there's a reason that it's not working. And you need to stop and evaluate, why is it not working? Is it not working because I'm not putting energy in? Is it not working because it's just not the right thing? Is it not working because I just need to tweak it? You need to understand why. That's my favorite question. Why? And if the answer is because it's not for you, stop that. Just stop it. Because you have a choice.
You said this earlier, and I want to talk about that. When you said that at the beginning of the pandemic and everybody was running to the internet, and you and I talked about that last week about the beauty of what had happened to the station taking off is because it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. And I've been having some meetings. We've got different shows getting ready to come in. And I tell them all the time, don't be so focused on who's listening in here in this city. Build your show first, because what happens is, what one may have success in, and it looked like it happened overnight. The situation was the pandemic happened.
Yes.
And people were all on the internet. Now people are gone and moving around.
Yes.
So you have to work a little bit harder than the next person probably had to work.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of competition out here.
Right.
So it's not, it's brutal to compete against something
Yeah.
when you don't know how soon a person started.
Right.
Or how long a person had to be added in order to get what they have. And that's what happens with social media.
Yes.
You start looking around at other people and seeing their success, but you don't know how long they've been there. Timing is everything.
Timing is
They've
everything.
got their target audience.
Yep.
And
Yep.
everybody has a different need.
Absolutely.
You just have to know the need that you're supposed to feel.
Absolutely.
And the time that you're supposed to feel it. And then God gives us those winks.
Yes,
Like
he does. Yes, he did.
Boom,
right.
Go to the
right. Right.
So, it's all about time and chance.
It is. And you know what? See, this is why, y'all, this is why it is important to listen. Because let me tell you something. Let me tell you what I just got out of what Jerry said. I've been talking to you about timing. Be careful about timing. Understand that there's timing in every success, right? There was timing around Bill Gates and Microsoft versus, Steve Jobs and Apple. There was timing, right? When the guy from Atari built that, there was all kinds of stuff happening that, the universe conspired to make this happen. I had never thought, I've said it. I've said the words, but I think I did a podcast on this. Did you hear what you just said, right? We don't always hear what we're saying because our brain is focused on talking, not on listening when we're speaking. Jerry just said, the pandemic happened and that was a thing for us. I had never until this moment had I put that in context. Never had I put it. Now I've said it, right? We were here through the pandemic. We stayed. We kept building. We were here. We met all of that. And all of that is true. Never had I connected that to, I actually had some really good timing. Never until this moment. See, that's why you got to listen. You got to listen. You got to pay attention. You got to be open to the God winks. That was a God wink. I had never put the success of this show, which is due to all of you, right? Listening and tuning in to timing, to Jerry seeing something in me, my having people in my corner that said, you need to say yes to that. And then just showing up and being consistent.
But you would have thought it was lackadaisical.
Yes.
But it was timing.
It was timing.
Did it when we thought you have done it.
It wasn't the right time.
It wasn't the right time.
Everything happens for a reason and when it's supposed to. So go back, sit strong in who you are, the value that you bring because you exist, and then understand where you are in the context in which you're operating. And then you can work on everything else. You can work on clarifying your vision. You can work on moving into action, but you got to get tight on the value of you as an individual first and foremost. Stand strong in that because that's going to keep you when things get crazy. That's going to keep you when things get crazy. And thank goodness. And a good therapist, right? That's going to keep you where you need to be. All right, y'all. So remember, next week, Terry Scott, president of the Houston Area Urban League Guild, is going to be here. So tune in for that. I'm really excited to have her in studio. I apologize again for the technical issues. I don't know what's going on in the StreamYard, but it cut out a couple of times. So hopefully you were able to still catch back up to come in. And then we're going to be doing pop-ups the week of the 21st. So stay tuned for that. I believe the actual is Tuesday the 21st, that Tuesday, or is it 23rd? I can't remember, 22nd. But that week, not next week, week after next, we're doing a pop-up. So I'll be in Puerto Rico broadcasting live the radio show, the Rutledge Perspective radio show live here on KCOH. So I won't be in the window that week. I will be in Puerto Rico. And then also doing a live broadcast of the podcast. So if you are in Puerto Rico, if you follow the shows, please pop up, right? I'll get everything out there to let you know where I am. Please pop up and let me know you're there. I would love to be able to engage with you and meet you in person. Yeah, so let's do that. And in the meantime, make sure there's a bunch of, from a voting perspective, because we always talk about voting, there are a bunch of special elections happening, right? The next ones are happening on the 24th and the 23rd. So pay attention in your districts. Most of these are state special elections for representatives are the ones that I'm seeing. There are some city kind of recalls, but most of these are special elections. So voting is a constant. It is a constant. So make sure you are registered. It's a great time to get registered. It's always a good time to get registered. Get registered, go educate yourself on your special election and go vote. Go see the new machines, go see the process, go feel it all out so that you got 2 years to prepare for the next big one, right? But these local ones count. It's the 24th. So the show will be on the Tuesday, the 24th of January. So 2 weeks from today, the 24th, we'll be broadcasting live. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. If you haven't, go watch my little video that I posted on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram saying thank you. I posted all the places around the world that showed up in 2022. And I know y'all are back in 2023. Thank you for being here. Love you guys very much. I'm going to head out and we'll catch you next week. Bye.